Okay. So good evening, everybody, especially the guys. I want to welcome all the guys on Zoom and the guys on YouTube. For you on Spaces, we've been chatting already, but I would like to let you know that my guest, Aga Sekalala Jr., Managing Director, Yoga Chick, but most importantly, an entrepreneur in his own right. He's into various other businesses that he will be talking to us about. I don't want to steal his thunder. So Aga, it's really nice to have you this evening, and thank you so much for agreeing to come to talk to us.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
You know how long people have been asking for you. There's been this huge demand and pressure for you to come and mentor a lot of people.
No problem. Thank you. It's good to be here, finally. It's also been great to hear some of the distinguished guests you've had on Spaces. They have done a really excellent job of mentoring the listeners who have seemed to have quite a thirst to be mentored.
Yeah, I think the issue that we discovered is that there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of people wondering where after COVID, or how do we work through all of this in order to go through and come out at the other end still intact. So what we didn't realize is how valuable some of these perspectives are from people who have made it, people who have experienced these things before. Yeah. So, and that's why having people like you, and we didn't necessarily go for, big people. It's people who had a story to tell. We didn't care. Some of the people who have come on, by the way, have like 3 followers on Twitter. So they're not big personalities. But we always start this show with me serving you coffee.
Okay, thank you.
And this is mine, so which you know very well. And I'm sure you know the story of how this whole farm started. So that will do for you tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't drink coffee very late in the evening. I might.
In fact, this is Robusta, so I warn you early.
I'll just sip a bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you're most welcome. So let's start with the early times.
Yeah.
Or maybe should we start by this? What's a family business? Maybe let's start there. What's a family business? I mean, is it, as I said before earlier in the break, is it something that started in the bedroom, or what? What makes it a family business as opposed to other types of businesses? Yeah.
I think fundamentally a family business is one where at least 2 or more family members, people who are in the same family, are involved in either an aspect of ownership or an aspect of management.
Okay.
We try not to call it a family business if they are involved in, if they are workers, for instance, in the business. That could happen. That doesn't make it a family business. But
yes.
If the ownership, especially at the early stages or in terms of development of the firm's life cycle, that's normally considered a family business. So now you could also have many combinations of family ownership. You could have a husband and a wife.
Okay.
That's
what are the typical ones that we are
very common?
Yes.
Very common in this part of the world. It's a husband and a wife.
Okay.
So a wife starts a business maybe with her husband. The husband maybe might be involved in raising capital. The wife does the day-to-day work. It could be the other way around. It could be vice versa.
Yes.
You could also have brothers. 2 brothers is also very common. I would imagine sisters, siblings also, and then cousins is also quite common, because cousins could be 2 people who've known each other. Yes. They've grown up together, and so they understand each other, especially in the smaller, more modern families. Cousins are a replacement for the old big traditional family where we have 16 to 20 siblings.
Yes.
And it's very easy to find somebody. So in these particular cases, you'd find cousins coming together to start a business. But normally in the traditional, in the academic sense of the word, a cousin business at founding stage is normally not considered. It's considered a normal partnership. A normal partnership, yeah.
What's the story about, in family businesses, about the so-called vision bearer? That there is always a somehow a patriarch who is the founder of and is the one driving this business?
It's normal. I think that that is typical.
Yeah.
Typically, you would have one founder, and the founder would start the business. It could be adversity, it could be circumstances that get them starting the business, and they would be the ones who know what problem they're trying to solve and what's the opportunity they're trying to grab in this particular case.
Yeah.
And then they would eventually, as the business grows, find themselves having to bring on board family members, either out of that also being an opportunity in itself to get trusted management or to get trusted co-owners. It could be in the case like in Uganda, it's very common where you need another director to get two directors to set up a company.
That's true, yeah.
So that's also a very common model. So we have them forming a business in that because of those circumstances.
So just to get it clear, do those family businesses, because sometimes or mostly you see that these businesses start informally.
Correct.
You know, like if you look at, say, the late BMK, he started as the trader, the individual who was trading.
Yes.
In the case of your dad, did he start it as a formal structure or did he start as a, so the beginnings are always very interesting, and because it helps people understand what it is they're doing.
Different people have a different start. I think that because of the nature of the opportunity and the time and the context is very important. That before, it's not easy to generalize that everybody is informal then becomes formal. I think that in the case of my father, he was a management training consultant himself.
Yes.
So everything in his makeup was to set up a small company and start in a formal way and build the company in the way that he had been teaching business owners
how to do
business.
Okay.
So in his case, he had done the formal training around business.
Yes.
In a lot of cases where a business starts out by somebody, we have plenty of friends in the late 80s.
Yes.
They would fly to London, bring back a couple of records, come back, sell them, then they would come back and
I know those friends.
you come back and you have some turntables, and sooner or later you set up a small music setup, and sooner or later you grow it into a substantial business, into an entertainment empire.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I also thought that in some cases, let's say, somebody starts a business and then realizes the amount of work is overwhelming.
Yes.
Then goes and brings his brother.
Yes. That's also common.
Yeah.
Especially as the business grows, it's very common that, especially where you have a professional on one side, maybe a lawyer training, a business, somebody training, it's very typical to bring on board a brother and then to say, okay, we're growing a little bit, I need somebody to look after operations, you bring your brother. If you have grown children, maybe that could be something to think about. But typically, normally it's a brother, a wife. That's normally the starting point, and then it will.
And
the
issues of trust there that cause
trust. Yeah. Trust is very important. Yeah. One of the difficult parts of the difficulties of doing business is finding trusted partners. Yes.
You reminded me, I'm sure you know them, the Sevalamu family.
Yes.
So I attended one of their social events, and it's interesting how their elder brother started trading. Then he trained and all of them then became traders. But what was more interesting is that they then all married 5 sisters. I guess not typically that they all got together to family business, but they were all in the business of trading.
Yes.
Let me take you now to your own experience.
Yes.
At what point do you realize that you are in the family business?
Okay. There is no such thing. You don't wake up in the morning and realize that I'm in a family business.
Really?
You grow up in an entrepreneurial environment.
Yes.
So that's normally what you wake up to.
Okay.
You wake up to people buying and selling things. You
Yes.
wake up to your parents somehow always involved in some form of a transaction. Maybe they are growing something, if it's farming.
Yes.
Maybe if it is trading.
Yes.
So when you become conscious of the activity called work,
Yes.
you
Yes.
find that this is what they do, is to work, is that they actually go
for
out
a living.
Yeah, for a living.
Yeah.
They sell something, they buy something, they build something, and that is how, and that forms your first impression of what is it that people do to go to work.
Okay. Okay.
And then you go to school, and the person who sits next to you, coincidentally, their parents
Yes.
go to
An office.
or to a clinic or to something,
Or to a classroom to
or to a
teach.
classroom to teach, and they
and
have
for them, that's work.
and for them that's their version of work. And so all of a sudden,
Yeah.
in the olden days, it would be that the traders sometimes were looked down upon because they tended to be uneducated.
Okay.
It tended to be a looked down upon profession.
Yes.
So when they ask you in class, what do your parents do? You're not the first one to put up your hand. you let the ones who have doctors put up their hands. Okay, you guys, you go ahead. leave that one for the doctor.
Doctors, lawyers.
Yes, doctors, government bureaucrats. Those ones put up their hands. By the time they get to you, you have figured out what to say.
My dad does business.
My dad sells things.
But okay, so which then raises the question, so how does that influence your choices? So let me so what was the opportunity for you to participate in the business? How did it come about?
Okay.
At even a much earlier age, yeah.
Because your parents are farmers, they are traders, they
Yes.
are selling and buying and selling things.
Yes.
What it means is that when you get out of school, you go to you're picked most of the time.
Yes.
You'll be picked up, and in my particular case,
Yes.
you end up at a petrol station. And you're standing around, and of course you can't stand around for too long.
Doing nothing.
You're doing nothing. So you've got to pick up the oil. Somebody wants something. You get the money. You count it. So you stand behind the counter. So automatically you become the dukawala.
Whoa.
So you've finished your school. You go at the end of the day where you're waiting maybe for them to close up, and then maybe you can go home, because most of the time you have one shared vehicle that you all have to use, and you go to this place where there is buying and selling of goods, and so you have to learn how to count. Wow. And you have to learn very early how to count.
Money, not just counting. Money.
You have to count money.
Yes.
And you have to know what goods cost what.
Very early, because you are now.
You're now there. They're going to tell you, okay, bring this. Okay, somebody asks you.
Just because you happened to be there.
You have to be there. Your school is done. You are in the. You're not going to sit in the class.
Okay. Let me go back. Because this is so profound for me. So there's only one family car.
Yes.
You're picked from school.
Yeah.
4 p.m., 5 p.m.
Yeah.
But these people, their business, their work life hasn't ended.
No.
So you go to the petrol station.
You sit behind the desk. Maybe they say, okay, do your work.
Yes.
Do your homework while you wait a bit. Maybe
for them to wind up the business.
Wind up, count, do the summary, close the books for the day.
Yes.
And, lock up the shop.
But the more profound point for me there is that you then happen to have some downtime, which you don't know what to do with. So you become a hand
Yes.
in the shop.
Of course.
And in the process of that, you begin to learn things which are important.
Exactly. And at that point in time, you learn that the customer has to first hand over the money.
Whoa.
The customer has to first hand over the money, then you give them the goods. That's a very first fundamental.
Wow.
That's fundamental. At that point in time, that's a very early instinct that you have to acquire the money. How much is it? Is it enough? Does it actually purchase this item? And this is you're maybe 7, maybe, you know. You're young. You're a young man.
At 8 years,
yes,
you're figuring this stuff out. Oil costs this much.
Oil, a little bit of can of oil, a filter costs this much. This, you know,
and
this
that money of this magnitude has to be in my hands.
In your hands before you can hand over that good to the person across on the other side.
So I want to describe to you a totally different scenario that many of us are guilty of. So in your case, you're picked, you go to a petrol station, you learn this. But a lot of other people, they're picked from school and the parents still have to go via a pub.
Okay.
Yeah, but can you imagine, you are learning, so while somebody like you is learning how to count money, imagine the child who is sitting in the back of the car waiting for the parents to be through with their pub session. What do you think they're learning?
I don't know. I don't know. We were very far away from a pub.
I know. Very far away from a pub.
From a pub.
So, how does that now influence what you've just described? How does that begin to impact your thinking later on as you start to grow up? And, you know, what's your position in the family in terms of the...
Of course, I mean, you now understand that you have to be of use. To be of use means that you have to have some form of, you have to do something to earn your place, yes. In this setup. In this setup, yes. So in this arrangement, it is not enough just to sit there and do nothing. You've got to get up and at least appear to be active and at least do something. Don't let the people stand around. So
you have to earn your place.
So you have to earn your place. Then you also realize that you have to earn something. You have to get
some income.
You have to get something. You have to get some income. How do you get income? How do you earn money? You've got to give somebody a good in return.
For the money that comes in.
For the money that comes in. And then at that point in time, you need to get that money and put it in a safe place.
Oh, first let's go back.
so that's a secondary, that's an activity. Once you've collected the money, you need to put it in a safe
So activity number 1 is money first, then good money first, and its accuracy is checked. Once you confirm that the money you've received corresponds to the good, then you hand over the good.
The good, yes.
Now you're saying next step is what?
You've got the money.
Yes.
Now that money has to go somewhere into a central place.
Okay.
So normally there's a cash till of some sort.
Yes.
So the money has to go somewhere and it has to be organized and it has to be ready to be counted when they close the day. So, wow. There is a series of actions that is going on here, and you are in the midst of it, or it becomes a part of your understanding of how the world works.
Yes.
So this is your view. I mean, while other people get a different view,
yes,
this is your view of how the world works.
Yes.
That's what you see.
That's what you see.
That's what you live by.
And so how does this influence your values as an individual? And how do you get to know the values of a family? The ones that drive the business.
Before you even get to the values, the first thing you realize in class is that you have to pay a lot of attention to the mathematics teacher.
We're now on rule number 3 for a family business.
Yes. Now you need to know your numbers, because
there is a functional need.
There is a functional need to be able to be astute with those numbers.
Because for many of us, mathematics was abstract. But for you guys who are already in this, you saw the correlation
between what the math does and what it counts.
And how it impacts your life directly.
Exactly.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
So you understand at that point in time. Now, okay, I go to school every day, but now I do understand that all these sums and additions mean something. That's the first thing.
It enables me in the evening to know how much money
is in the till. It enables me to also understand how much I might need to give back. It enables me to know how many items I can give somebody within a certain amount. So if he gives me X, I can give him 2 items, or I can only give him 1 item.
So very early on, you see a correlation between your schooling and your life.
That's true.
And yet, I want to take you back to the thing we talked about, because for you, you said that's what you saw as work.
Yes.
Now, my dad was a civil servant, and my mom worked in a company. And all I saw them do in the morning is get up and dress and go to work. I have no clue. The only times I got involved with money was when my mother gave me money for rent, money for fees, money for the utilities.
She does.
No utilities, because I was the one she sent to pay.
Okay.
But she did all the counting. My job was that I was a
To
trustee.
deliver it to somebody.
Yeah, I go to the KCC office in Naguru to pay for the rent. I took the school fees to school, but I wasn't as involved in the money-making activity. I didn't know how she made her money. Later on, I got to, because we were selling bread. We also had a family business selling bread. So the point is, how many people out there are missing out on these experiences because of the employment nature of our situation? That a lot of people are just employed. There is no interaction between them and... So, in other words, employment is not even a family enterprise.
I don't think it's a missing out. This is something that is, I would call it contextual.
Right.
You are there. You are there. I mean,
Yes.
you are there. That's your life. You've ended up there. Mm-hmm. But you asked earlier, what are the values now that you start to obtain? The
Yes.
first one would be that you need to be able to understand that it is a job. You need to understand that you need to collect that money. You need to look at the person in the eye and say, maybe this is enough money, or I need to give you more money, or you need to add some more money, or
Yes.
something, without being shy about money. That's the first thing that you're now acquiring. The other skill then at that point in time means that it is now important that once somebody gives you something, that you give them something back in return. So
That's a transaction.
That's a transaction. So now you sort of now understand one for one. You understand what goes with the other.
Yes.
Then the second thing becomes that money that is collected in the evening,
Yes.
is not your money.
Really?
It is not dad's money. It's not mom's money. But it is money that belongs to this place. Then it's the business's money. It is not money you can dip your hands into. Now already you're getting that first value.
To distinguish what monies are for.
The money that is yours is okay. At the end of the week, you worked and you got 10 shillings. Now that is your money. That money in the counter is not your money. Don't touch it. Don't think about it. Don't just imagine that it is there. It has got its own specific purpose.
But that's why I am trying to. That's why I am trying to sort out this issue, because imagine those of us who had parents who were salaried, and then we also went on to be salaried. You're dealing with your money.
Yeah.
So you don't care whether you buy a beer or buy. So how can we learn from that to distinguish this money? Because as you were talking, I was thinking, even my salary was never really actually my money, because it had obligations. There was school fees, there was a mortgage, there was all those things. So what at the end of the day was mine wasn't clear.
Okay.
So What other values do you learn when you've been raised in a context of a family?
I mean, the fundamental is that you've got to work really hard.
Wow.
If you don't, you get nothing. You just got to work. You've got to earn. That's how you earn. You got to put in the effort to be able to earn anything. So that's standard. Hard work. You also have to learn that if you say you will do something,
you do it.
You have to do it. Reason is, most of the time, if you don't, nobody else will.
Okay, now I must ask you this one, because for me it's interesting. Yes. So at what point how do you know that now dad is being dad and now dad is the boss?
Dad was always the boss. so that's a joke, but
I know what you mean, but the roles are fused.
The roles were, Dad worked a lot of the time he was working. He worked late into the night. Even as a teenager, I saw him work a lot.
Yeah.
There were times when you would sit down to talk about issues of your school, issues of your, what are you going to do? How are you going to execute ABCD in your private? But most of the time, you're talking about, if it is a work-related issue, he's boss. So most of the time, the discussion is around his boss.
Okay.
And it's work. You're talking about either it's going to be work.
Yeah.
If it's a holiday, you're talking about what has been done. So it's work. And then, you'd have the moments, and I think the moments would be very clearly calibrated. Okay, we're going to talk about your report.
Yes.
What are you going to do? How are you doing with this? How are you doing with that? How has that gone? What are the things that need to plan for? Where are you going to go for other additional school for this? Do you need some additional help? Those things, yes, you would always have those discussions. And also, you then at that point in time also have a lot of distinguish between dad and mom. So mom deals with certain issues, but dad deals with certain issues. Again, you have roles, a separation of roles.
So, tell me the decision-making dynamics in a family business. What drives those kinds of situations? I mean, in light of these relationships that exist, and these are real. I mean, you may find that, as siblings are, as situations are in families, some people think one child is favored, the other family members are feeling no, so-and-so is favored. As a child, how does that play into the family dynamic, the family business dynamic?
The family business decision-making is not a constant.
Yes.
And it is also not static, that it is going to always be the same all the time.
Right.
A family can very quickly gravitate to areas of competence, whereby certain people make decisions because they are more competent, they are more successful at making those decisions. A family can also be quite monolithic in nature, whereby one person makes all the decisions.
Yes.
Depending that if that person is very successful, they are the ones who make all the decisions.
Yes.
They might get a little bit of input, but they end up being. It also could be a situation where two people have to reach a consensus.
Yeah.
So there are different dynamics depending on the people.
Then there are those in the family who differ.
Yes. You, and it has to be. There has to be, not everybody will make decisions.
Yeah. Some other people just come and say, if Aga is making the decisions,
I'm fine.
I'm happy with that.
I'm okay, yes, I'm fine with that. Yes, that's also very common.
As there was the case of the Wall Street Journal when they were selling it to Rupert Murdoch.
Okay.
And I think the family that owns it, there was some brother who he'd gone off into being a hermit. So they had to find him. So I guess one of the questions that arises is, yes, if you have other businesses where you're all different, but how does the governance structure in a family gatherings from becoming family business events?
Family gatherings are basically family business events.
How?
They're all the time. So basically, not to say that the family can sit down and not have a meal and not talk about. You talk about many other things. You will talk about. You will talk about what you've seen in the news. You will talk about a crisis here. You will talk about floods somewhere else. Those conversations and discussions and interactions will happen.
Yes,
they're very common. Not a problem there. But then that also doesn't stop for a minute for you to go on a sidebar and then somebody say, there has been this that has been pending for a while.
Can we resolve it?
Can we resolve it now? Who do we need to call? Who do we need to speak to? So there is not to say that they are fine lines, but it is actually to say that it's an opportunity. People are together and they will speak freely. And speak. There are no, I think that there are no rules as to when you can't talk business.
So the thing is this also, which I wanted to talk to you about, that I think this one came up for many people. How do you, and when should you, or when is the most ideal point, start to prepare the next generation for participation in and taking off? Why are you laughing? It's a serious matter.
because you're thinking about it as an event.
Okay.
So you're thinking about it that there comes a day, your 50th birthday and your inaugural, and
ceremony.
The ceremony and dress up and it doesn't work like that. And from an early stage, it is going to see the business, going to be at the business, spending time with workers, playing at the business. My sons, when they came from school, would come to the radio station.
Yes.
And they would run through the studio. They knew everybody.
Yes.
And in that way, they were getting familiar with the business.
Yes.
So people know them. They know who works there. They know who does what.
Yes.
And so it is an ongoing process. With the boys, for instance, would make sure that they knew some of the programs. They knew some of the presenters.
Yes.
That was something that we did almost deliberately.
For them to familiarize.
For them to familiarize and understand that these are people. There's nothing special about it. It is something that needs to be done. And at some point in time, you will need to have other discussions with these people. At some point in time, you're going to grow up. You're going to have to run and manage these people.
Right.
So that happens. But you are working in the business.
Yes.
My sons have constantly been. We have an activity for the young ones, which is when they start to have P7 holidays. They do what they call sorting eggs.
They do what?
Sorting eggs. So, sorting eggs is a.
By the way, I think I did people a disservice, Aga. I think in all fairness, I think let's first go back. So, let me just ask you this directly. I was avoiding it, but now I think it has to be said. What's your family business?
Oh, we have several family businesses.
Yeah.
They're the family businesses that were founded by my father.
Yes.
And some of his partners.
Yeah.
Their family business were founded by my father and my mother.
Okay.
And over the years, they have grown and have one of our companies, Yugachik Poultry Breeders. Okay. It's a producer of poultry.
But when does the poultry business actually start?
The poultry business starts we started the business in 1992.
Okay.
And so that business, for instance, when the business was founded, my father had a partnership, him and Mr. James Mulwana, and a partner of theirs by the name of Hans Blasberg. So the three of them started the business. They were the partners. So for a while, my father didn't run the business on a day-to-day, but Mr. Mulwana was the acting. So Mr. Mulwana was my boss. So for a while, Mr. Mulwana was my boss. And the late James Mulwana always would call you into a meeting, and he would tell you, he would read you the riot act as to what things need to be done and what things what shouldn't be done. But you know,
I am laughing because he did it for so many people, whether the business was his or not. I mean, he used to read me the riot act when I still used to work at Vision. He would call and say, "This is not correct. You shouldn't be here."
So that's one of the businesses. We also have an agro trading, agro processing business. We also run a vanilla business, which was also started in the late 80s. Like 89. We've been exporting flavor raw materials to the US. Then there are my own personal businesses, the radio station being one of them, the other network companies, the real estate companies. So those ones are some of the ones that I have founded, sometimes by myself or with partners. You know, the media businesses with the cousin.
And these yours are also, your family is also involved. Your own kids or at least to some extent they're
not yet, but they are. We're trying. We're in the
there's an awareness.
There's an awareness, and there's a process of interesting them. Yes.
So back to the egg sorting. First, tell me about egg sorting.
So egg sorting is a repetitive, but very necessary task if you produce chicks. So you need to make sure that the eggs are the right size. They don't have cracks. They're clean. So you're looking for a series of attributes on the egg. And it is typically done. It is typically done by hand. So they'll pick out the bad eggs, and it's a skill. They learn how to do it pretty quickly. But you're sorting hundreds, literally hundreds of thousands of eggs
throughout the day.
Throughout the day. So it's a
mind-numbing
exercise.
But why is it such an important element of orientation for
it is the equivalent of being in the shop.
So it is you at 5:15 p.m. at the petrol station.
Exactly. You're counting.
You're picking.
You're picking. You're understanding where does the quality come from. You're understanding what is good, what is bad. You're understanding how this whole thing works. But you also have people around you who are also doing the same work. There's a dynamic. You have to learn. They have to teach you. You have to be able to observe them working. And there's a lot of things that are, small things that are happening all along. And the young people pick up these skills. They slowly learn. And they realize very quickly that, you know, it's not a very complex job, but it's quite repetitive. You got to do it all the time. There is also vaccinating the chicks. So when the chicks, each one gets an intramuscular injection for Marix, and so each one is injected individually, and so it is quite a quick activity. You gotta keep on injecting these chicks. So there is so many activities that the young people engage in their holidays to learn the basic discipline of working, earning, sorting, counting, and value for people and value for their effort.
So on that very point, what would you say to, because a lot of people who are listening to us, quite a few of them are our generation, and they're beginning to get their children to learn certain things for the next stage. And many of us of our generation have been employees, and we shielded our children from a lot of the work-related issues. We didn't want to burden them with this problem. What would you say to parents like me? How can I create the kind of egg sorting opportunity you are talking about, even if I don't necessarily have a business that I run?
Okay.
Yes.
I think the first thing is that they don't necessarily need to work. They don't necessarily need to work in your own business.
Right.
I think
you don't need to have a business for them to work.
For them to learn how to work.
Yes.
And I think that tends to be, it's a fallacy in a way. You can actually, through a friend or through someone, if you can manage the logistics around that,
yes,
be able to get them to get some simple work experience from a fairly early age.
Yes.
It's also good for them to start to understand maybe perhaps the difference between different kinds of work that is out there.
Okay.
So they then can understand, maybe I need to put in a stronger effort and go to school and not end up doing this job for the rest of my life.
So the town where my children go to school, there was always two guys. One guy used to sit at the street corner and play a guitar to get a couple of coins. And there was one who used to walk up and down the same street asking for pocket change. So every time I used to walk there with my children, I'll tell them, if you're not very serious with your school, this is how you're likely to end up. But you see, the thing is that for a lot of us as a generation of parents, the question is, because we don't want our children to suffer.
That's the word.
Yeah. Talk to us. What are we getting wrong? You're frowning.
I'm not sure. I think that suffer is in your mind. It's a first and foremost. You need to be very clear that suffer is it's up to you. You've got to think through. But what is important? You need to instill certain values. You need to get them to understand the value of hard work.
Yes.
You need to grow them beyond an insular environment where they're home watching TV or simply in front of their PC, in front of their phone, in front of their gadgets.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. I think that parents, you need to go out there and see what things can be done, are being done.
Yeah.
I think you have cows at Ruggiero Farm.
Yeah.
The
most interesting one I did, and I did it in the last lockdown, and I plan to do it again in the coming season, was during the coffee picking exercise.
Yeah.
So I took them. I said, let's go. You just need to understand how tedious it is. So the most interesting thing is each one of them carried their own boombox, their own music gadget, whatever they call them, and each one had different versions. There's, I think, a Nigerian musician in the UK called Stormzy. So each one of them was playing Stormzy. But the biggest thing was not so much the repetitiveness of the job. It was the spiders. Why are we in this, Dad? But so that's what you mean. So yes. I have those opportunities.
You have those, yeah. And I think parents need to open their minds to different opportunities that exist out there. I could think of many things that they could do. I mean, there's all sorts of small, simple, repetitive jobs that these young people could try out to sort of start off, and then that builds a foundation, because later on they still have to do something. They've grown up a little bit. Maybe at that point in time, maybe sorting eggs might not be really the sort of thing that they could do. But at that point in time, they need to be able to do something else. That involves doing work with their hands.
So, at some point, you invested in your own ability to run a family business.
Yes.
What did you do?
The first thing was one, to understand that the family business, the family legacy has to continue, and I appreciate that. Is to say the business is not going to end
with the old man.
Yes, at that point in time.
And that you carry some sort of personal responsibility for continuity.
For continuity.
Yeah.
And we will be caretakers. We will be caretakers to hand it over to another generation. So we agree, first and foremost, to take on that responsibility, that we're going to be these caretakers. We will carry this thing from one generation to the next.
Yes.
We will do that, or we will try and hand over something
yes.
that they can also do in one shape or form, depending on the circumstance. Mm-hmm. Then you need to understand how is it run, and then you need to vest yourself in understanding the dynamics, get educated, understand one, education not only of business, mm-hmm. but also education of family business, for instance.
Yes.
Read, understand, mm-hmm. what are the dynamics, what are the things that need to be catered for, what are the correct governance structures that need to be put in place.
Yes. Yes.
How do you arbitrate when you have a disagreement? How do you mm-hmm. prepare? Mm-hmm. How do you prepare the next generation for, how do you set them up for success mm-hmm. as they run their business? What if they're not going to become mm-hmm. Managers on a day-to-day?
Yes.
Because that is the most common thing. That's the most common trend, mm-hmm. is that it is normally unlikely, unless you have very big families,
yes.
that all or some of them will be day-to-day managers. So then now they have to take on a new role. Is it a governance role?
Okay.
So maybe they need to be good hirers, good spotters of talent, know how to network, get the right people in the bus and put them in the right seats and say, okay, you run this business, and we will make sure that we've set our targets, we understand how the business runs, we know the basics of the finance, we know what needs to be done, run with it.
So you would also say to those who are who have a family business running and are actively involved, like yourself as a manager, that you also invest in the training of your children so that they acquire some skills that might be useful.
Correct. Correct. I mean, I think that's always ongoing. You have to invest in additional training. You have to invest in learning and growth. That is standard on corporate balance scorecards. So if that is the case, there is nothing wrong with learning and growth within a family business. You need to. That is an important aspect. You need to be able to say, what are the new skills that are required to take this business into the 21st century. Yes. How do we grow this business into the 21st century? So it is those kinds of skills, that skill set also is important. And also, one, you need to be able to know which skill sets they are. So you need to understand them in that way.
Let me ask, because there was somebody who, Cedric, he works at PwC. So Cedric sent me a report that they did about family businesses. So I want to read out, Cedric Kabushenga wanted to share something with us which I think would inform our discussion. So Cedric says, awareness of the confluence of family systems and business systems in the family business, identification and separation of ownership issues. In other words, family governance, purpose and values from business issues, growth and profitability. Recognizing that family governance is paramount. Why? Because business success cannot compensate for family failure. A focus on family cohesion is non-negotiable. Respect within the family and a genuine commitment to fairness within the family, establishing and adhering to family rules, developing conflict resolution mechanisms. Conflict is inevitable. Effective succession planning. I think Cedric has really plunged us into the meat now. So I like the way Cedric thinks, because Cedric has the luxury of removing himself and being a consultant and studying these things from a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
But he's not a player in the sense. So the question for you is, you as a participant, which of these issues are important? So, for instance, developing a conflict resolution mechanism, because conflict is inevitable. How do you deal with those situations in the family?
I think conflict is a nice place to go to, but I think I like to start with ownership.
Okay, fine.
I like to start with separate of ownership and business issues.
Okay.
So I think that quite often it's confusing. Is who owns what? And I told you from the beginning is to understand there is ownership, but then there is ownership. But what is that ownership for? What is the purpose of that ownership?
Yes.
So the ownership could be that you are going to be the one who takes the risk. You're the one who's going to be able. You're the one who has to sign on legal documents.
Okay.
But
you're the one who's committing.
You're the one who's committing, but you're committing on behalf of the family. You don't behave as an absolute
monarch.
It is not your
personal estate.
Yes. You have to be very clear. So very clearly, ownership.
What type of?
I think the values set up fairly early. Communication.
Yes.
Is what's going on the inside of the farm transparent? Are people able to find out? Are stakeholders able to know? Is there communication back and forth?
Yes.
So those things need to be set out fairly early,
yes,
and to sort of reduce a certain amount of opaqueness. Because if a business is indebted, and you very well know, you go to the bank, you borrow, and the first thing the bank makes you sign in the loan agreement is dividends becomes secondary. First you have to pay
off the loan.
First you have to pay off the loan.
Yeah.
So why would someone then at that point in time expect that there would be a dividend when you have a loan?
Exactly.
You have a loan. So the important thing is fairly early on.
And also, what did the loan do?
What did the loan do?
Yeah.
Was the loan well utilized? But if the loan is well utilized, and the information is available and everything is there for everybody to see, normally there is no issue.
So, but let's go back to the issue of family rules. And for me here, there is the question of hierarchy, family dynamics. Let me even put it crudely, because Cedric calls it fairness within the family. But there are also elements of emotions, jealousy. So, because Aga runs the business, but Aga also drives a BMW, then I don't run the business. I am just a shareholder, but I'm driving a Toyota. So is the business benefiting all of us? And, from childhood, Aga was always favored because he's the one who was always carrying the oil at the petrol station. He's the one who counted the money. The rest of us were doing homework. So where do those things play in terms of, the family rules, the family protocol? Some families have really strong protocols. It is known that Aga is the, and his word is almost law. So,
I think it's a lot is in the setup, in how the family is set up.
Okay.
Sometimes, to be honest, Robert, it's just luck.
Yeah. Yes.
A lot of times it's luck.
Luck.
It could be luck that you happen to be 8 years older than the next born sibling.
Yes.
I mean, so that's just sheer toss of a coin luck, and to claim that everything has got a very simple setup, I think sometimes is also not accurate. I think where you have a lot of competition for say you have maybe very many similar aids. It's important that the people with authority very clearly determine what people do.
Yes.
So it becomes very almost corporate, whereby people have their job and they know what they do and they know who does what. So very clearly, if it is certain, that's where I was telling you about decision making. Is that certain decisions are made by consensus. Certain decisions are made by listening to everybody and getting a view. Some decisions are made by everybody agreeing that yes, that's the best way to go forward. And then some decisions are made by one person.
I want us to go into another sensitive area in terms of family business. Culture. So there is this notion that somehow the Asian community, particularly the Indians,
Correct.
have figured out how to run a successful family business, and that for them they've got it sorted out. The other group, of course, are the Arabs, also called not Arabs in the sense we call them Arabu, so the sort of
like the Lebanese.
The Lebanese, exactly, the Lebanese, the Somalis, they've done well. And in Uganda, and I'm really going out on a limb here, is...
Yeah, you are. You're pushing it.
I'm pushing it, but I'll push anyway. Is the Muslims that they seem to have figured it out. And that the rest of us, we are so busy fundraising for churches that we forgot.
No.
Is there a cultural... How much does culture play into how family businesses either succeed or are constructed better than others?
I don't have, coming here or sitting here right now, I won't be able to tell you that there is one culture that is particularly successful versus the other. What I do know from my observation and study, at least what I have seen,
yes,
is that comparatively, let's say the Asian Indian culture and Asian subgroup of individuals have just been doing this longer.
Okay.
So if you start to look just at Ugandan businesses,
yes,
the oldest businesses you will find are going to be maybe late 60s, with a bit of a lull in between, and then maybe revival in the early 80s.
Yes.
In the early to mid 80s.
Yes.
Actually, predominantly, a lot of businesses are 90s.
A lot of the Ugandan businesses are really 90s. That's
yes.
correct.
And if you just jump across and go to Kenya,
yes,
you will find businesses that are from the 60s.
Well,
you'll find Kenyan businesses that are 50s.
Well, the Madvanis here, 50, no.
Early 10s, 1914, yes. So early.
Yes.
Now, the difference becomes that the community is doing more business. The community learns how to accumulate and save capital.
Okay.
And the community then becomes more adept at being able to, they understand what are the hindrances to doing business.
Yes.
So these communities quickly accept. And one of the biggest hindrances, and one of the reasons why they, you find, for instance, Eritreans save a lot of money. Their communities put a lot of money in savings, and then they allow the people who know how to do the business to invest the business.
Okay.
Not everybody will do the business. Not everybody tries to do the business.
Yes.
And, our Somali brothers are the same way.
Yes.
There's a lot of, everybody saves, and some of the money is set aside, and the money is invested.
So Aga has proved himself as a seasoned entrepreneur.
Yes.
So you can trust Aga with...
Yes. He's got a big venture that requires capital, rather than him going to borrow mbuzi inte.
Yes.
From a commercial, institution that's going to take all the money away.
Yes.
We invest with him.
Yes.
And so these communities learn how to accumulate capital and understand
and generate the wealth.
And generate the wealth and understand where to put the wealth and how to specialize, how do you put it in the right place so that it can work. Now, our challenge is just a time frame thing, and I think that with time, I have seen, you will see better practices.
Okay.
But our colleagues are ahead of us. If you're running a race, if you're running a race, a few people will be ahead of you. You're not ever going to run the same.
You don't even have to go across the border. One of the things that struck me recently, Mr. His name has flown out of my head. The old man of Metropolitan, the guy who passed on. Somani. Somani passed on at 92.
Yes.
But of all those years, Somani had been in business.
Yes.
Pretty much. So if you take off 20 years for him to be a fairly decent adult.
So say he retired and started playing more golf at about 75.
Yes. So he had 50.
So he had, so he had been doing business, and he had been doing international business most likely.
Exactly.
So he's got a community in Canada, a community in India, a community in Kenya that he's working with from that stage. You work back the numbers and you will find that it is not so easy to match.
Yes.
The skills. So when you see his offspring have built an enterprise like Renzori and been able to sell it.
Yes.
It
has a history.
It has a history. Yes, it has a depth of history. Yeah, and culture and a whole legacy behind it.
So equally, when we see Yugachik or Jessa, because those are the local businesses that we know of Ugandans that have been able to pass on the second. It's also 40, 50 years of the
30 years. Yugachik will be 30 next year.
Okay.
And considering that there is a period of time when so you can say from the early 70s is when my father started entrepreneurial activity.
So what are the lessons for us from those experiences? Because you've talked about longevity and what does that teach us, especially for people who, say like me. I'm trying to build an agribusiness out of coffee and bananas. What are the lessons I need to pick from that experience so that I don't repeat certain mistakes, or at least I can shorten my learning curve in terms of preparing for longevity?
First and foremost, you've got to ensure that the business is viable itself. So the business has to work. It's got to be. So
me as the founder,
the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure that it works. You got to make sure that it
pays for itself,
and it is dynamic and it is a growing business. That is just the basic. Unfortunately, you want to do both at the same time, not yet, but maybe the first thing that needs to happen is it a growing business that will be able to transcend the generation? That's a basic question. So that needs to be in place. So you need to start to think and say, okay, so Ruggiero Farm.
Yeah.
Am I going to set up a tourism business that my wife Cindy can run?
Yes.
So she runs the hotel part of the tourism business. So when the guests come, she runs that side of the business. Yeah. So that becomes one side. Yeah. So Mpanju runs the coffee business. So he does, in addition to the growing, he also buys in some coffee. He's doing some roasting.
So he does trading.
He does the
trading. There's an activity of that business that
he takes on. Yeah. And then the young lady does the milk. So she does the milk, and she produces
cosmetics,
and she produces cheese, and she produces ghee, and that is her line. Now you eventually become more of a visionary, and you're thinking, what else can we do? Can we move to a new site?
Okay.
Can we go into this business is more successful. Maybe we need to move it away from here to another site and grow it out.
Or there's this new opportunity.
There's a new opportunity. And maybe it's not just maybe it's some cottage cheese that we can do that's organic.
And cosmetics is
an interesting area. That's another thing. And so you then grow a role. But there needs to be these activities. These activities need to have a life. They need to be earning. They need to be able to pay these people. They need to be able to keep them busy.
These are not hobbies.
No, these are not, and these can't be things that work once a year or twice or 3 times a year, and then the rest of the time there is nothing going on. No.
There has to be constant
economic activity where there is money crossing the counter, being collected and put in a till.
Please say that again. Because it's important for me. As we say, so let's repeat it again.
Money has to change hands on a regular basis. As you know, running an agribusiness, there has to be activities which are invested for the long term.
Yep.
There are activities which are of a seasonal nature. And then there are activities that bring in the daily money.
Yes.
Have to all run side by side. So one is used for growth, one is used to pay day-to-day costs.
Yeah.
One is your bumper, it comes in at a certain point in time. One goes on, maybe that's the business where people come in and sit down and have coffee on the weekend. But the hobbies, those in that particular scheme of things, you're not going to be able to pass on a hobby. A hobby is like playing golf.
Yeah, you'll go with it to your grave.
Yes, that's it.
I have a question from somebody who is asking from Kwifabi Eco Farms, Uganda. What if some of the members of the family actually trash the idea of the family and want it torn down to individuals? Again, this goes back to conflict.
Then clearly certain members of the family have not really quite understood what's going on, and therein is an opportunity for the people who understand what's going on to buy out the people that are people that are not interested.
Yes.
Now, torn down to me implies you used torn down and trashing.
Yes.
So they seem
violence.
That sounded quite heavy.
Yes.
Typically, it is people that don't see the value, or people that see value that is not being used properly.
Or they don't understand the vision.
The vision is and they don't understand. So basically, it could be that somebody feels that Ruggiero could be much better sold into 50 by 100 plots.
Plots, exactly.
Yes, and so
rather than growing coffee.
Rather than growing coffee, yes. And that's the difference, where somebody says, let's rip this thing apart, let's sell the plots, and then everybody go their separate ways.
The other big question that we need to deal with, that somebody is asking, Richard Alley is saying, I would like to learn from Aga the 3 main factors that determine sustainability of family businesses in Africa / Uganda. Which, like you told me, first of all, you were talking about, said the first thing you ought to do is make sure that the business is viable.
Yeah.
So, what else?
As my view would be that if the business is viable, then the business, it has to clearly define what is its long-term path in terms of where is it going?
Yes.
Where is it going?
Yes.
Is it going to grow at a rate? Because remember that your family will always grow faster than the business. So basically, as you grow down the generations, the number of people in the family will always grow at an exponential rate, at a much higher rate.
So the family, as a physical unit,
grows
much faster than the business's ability to grow.
Exactly. So there's a difference. And because of that, it is almost important to quickly identify those that are able to work within that particular growth, and then to also be clear on some few family members that might not
be interested.
might
I
not
mean,
be
they may
interested.
pursue
They
their
might not be, they will
professional careers.
professional careers and all other things that are going on. So a clear distinguishing that not everybody, not family business is not for everyone.
It definitely isn't for everyone in the family.
Exactly. Not necessarily because you're in the family, everybody is going to be able to do that. Yes. So a clear definition in that direction is very important.
But also a definition of the benefits of the business to the different family members.
To the different family members, yes. And so those values have to be defined fairly early on, and the business has to carry them and also has to practice them. The other thing, and I think that what is very important is sometimes it is defined, consultants say it a bit, but it is not very easy. It's important to determine that a business might be a lifestyle business. They say it's a lifestyle business.
Yeah.
Somebody's got an art gallery and that's what they enjoy doing.
Yes.
That might not be the sort of thing that they're going to be able to pass on to their children.
Exactly.
They might not be artists, they might not be interested in an art gallery, they might be a restaurant and they're not really interested in cooking, and they're not interested in food.
Yeah.
That doesn't really rhyme with them. And also, it is also then important to understand, will they be, and if they won't be, what is it that they will be or they will do? So that's why you hear at some point in time, businessmen might even sell a business and go on to invest in something else that might be able to transcend the generation.
I have one of my former board members. He called me a couple of months ago after I'd left, and we were conversing, and he told me something that really amused me. So he said he's got 3 children. They are all in very good jobs outside of Uganda.
Very common.
Yeah.
So it's a common characteristic.
Hugely prosperous, the 3 of them, in their own right. And the guy has over a square mile of trees here. He's in his late 60s, going into his 70s. And he's got things. So his wife has told him, look, liquidate and come and let's just stay here on our own. Which brings me to an issue that is persistent. Like when people come to see me at the farm, most times they find I am alone. So they ask me, but is your family interested? How are you engaging your children? How are you getting them interested in what you're doing? How are you making sure that your wife is interested? And they say, when I ask them why, they say, you see, if you're gone, how sure are you that she will be able to run it or that the kids will want to run it? And so the question, which is, how does anyone, is there even a model or a formula to interest these people in the business?
No. It is your own interest that has to be first and foremost. Then it is a salesmanship job. You have to sell the benefits of this business.
Yeah.
That your friend who has trees has to figure out, does he convince people that this is a good job for the environment? Is it something, is it a green business?
Yes.
Is it, but if you are unable to sell it, then at some point in time, you've got to accept that maybe not all the time is it going to be a business to be passed on. Yeah. There is also a lot of questions where people feel that there is no interest, and that also happens.
I mean, genuinely, if the children are not going to be interested, you'll probably see it anyway. So, but like in your case, they got you interested in the business. How did that happen? What is it that was done to get you as a child to say, okay, I like to see what my dad does is interesting. Maybe I should pick interest.
I have to be honest. I can't say that they did one thing specific or 2 things that these things got me completely interested, to give you an honest answer. I have to also take it that part of it is you grow up in it, you understand it, you have an appreciation for it, and then you become close. You become close to it. So you understand it as a form and a means of making a living. When I finished university, when I finished my undergraduate and I got my degree in chemical engineering, I weighed my options, and I looked at, I could become a chemical engineer full time and
go to NASA.
spend quite a bit of time. Spend quite a bit of time looking at petrochemicals and looking at, material science and that sort of thing.
Houston, Texas.
That kind of thing. That was really the the area that you're looking at.
Yeah.
But then there was also this great opportunity. Uganda was turning around. We had spent many years in the midst of a
civil war.
Yeah. It was the late 80s. We were opening up. We were going to become we were looking at a new future, really. And at that point in time, the allure of being close to home,
where the action was,
where there was going to be this burst of growth,
Kasaijas,
where there was going to be a big burst of growth, and the fact that was what I preferred. My dispensation preferred.
But to cut you short, that comes from being involved in business and transactions and being able to see the entrepreneurial side of things.
Yeah.
But if, like me, your dad was an employee, you were probably looking for the best possible job. So I would probably most likely have stayed in the US to get a job that would have been better.
Possible. So that's also possible.
So it comes down to the family experiences.
Exactly, to family experiences. It comes down to what is available, what are your options, what's on the table. And you sit down and you think to yourself and say, this seems to be more interesting. It's your personal decision. I have a sister who is very similar in background to myself. She's an engineer. She's an energy engineer, and she's chosen to live in Houston, exactly the place that you talked about. So she's made exactly it is not. It is the choice that is. It is a choice that, she feels that's what she would like. Not because there are no opportunities, but that's because that's what she feels closest to.
Which brings me to what I think is the more tricky question and the more difficult part. But I also know that not just your family experience, but you've been involved in all sorts of other places.
Yes.
Especially for family businesses, the question of succession and succession planning. Succession in the family, this is a big, for us, that's the musika. So there's the musika as a family and all the dynamics of that. And then there is succession in the family business. And when does the patriarch hand over? And, those kinds of questions. Is there an impatience on the part of the children? How do you deal with that? They're wanting to take the reins.
They want the reins very, very
quickly.
Yes.
How do you plan the succession? How do you, in a family context, and manage those dynamics that we're talking about?
I think that the most important is the expectations that the individuals have. What expectations do individuals have? If you think that by getting the family reins you'll be able to dip your hands in the kitty, in the till,
and make money,
and make a lot of money or become very happy at that, then there might be an allure or a tendency to go in that direction.
Yes.
If you understand that actually now, the spotlight is on you, you're the main caretaker, you've got to really now manage this thing on a day-to-day, there might not be as much of an urgency
to want to take.
Exactly. So there might not, the urgency, the status, the circumstance becomes a little bit different.
But the question for me is, again, back to that, is how do you balance? So let's say that from a family standpoint, I am best suited to be the successor to my father.
Okay.
In the family dynamic.
Yeah. But
I am not the best suited to take over as the head of the family business.
I think it's becoming more and more common to be able to accept those differences.
Okay.
Because of the sophistication and the way business works now. So it's becoming quite common for that to become very awareness awareness of the fact that someone might be the better business brain,
Yes.
even though they might not be the musika.
So the guy is number 4 in the family lineup.
But he could be a better
Business
manager. I am seeing a tendency to understand, to looking and understanding that. So as people try out different things and
Yes.
different configurations,
Yes.
this is not completely uncommon. And that's why earlier you were talking about, for instance, the Indian community. It is not uncommon for a son-in-law to take over a business. And I think now,
Really?
now you're even shocked, but it is not uncommon. A lot of the people who now become the head of the family business, that they were sons-in-law. They marry a daughter of the founder.
Remember, you're the one who got me to buy and read the biography of Katharine Graham, the Washington Post.
Yes.
Actually, she was the daughter of the founder, I think, but it's her husband who first took over running the business.
Yes. So that is not unusual. And with those communities...
So let me throw a spanner in the works. So suddenly, for the family businesses, it now becomes important also who your children marry.
Well, I think it becomes inevitable, and it becomes maybe not by choice directly, but it helps if they are well mannered, have good values, have values that mirror what the company thinks and how the company views itself,
And that they can participate
and that they can participate, communicate, and actually offer value and are hardworking and all the right things, then I don't even think that there is much of a debate.
So really, at that point, blood is not necessarily thicker than water.
At that point, yes, because
you're tapping into the best of what you have within the family.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the point I was trying to say, that there is a view that begins to open up and to say, well, we could have gone out and hired someone. But
this guy is here. He has a stake. His children are part of this arrangement.
And he's got a stake. And he also understands he is actually just a trustee.
For his children.
For his children. And if that's very clear for his children and his nieces and his nephews, if that's clear, then there is no difficulty.
So I want to begin us to wind up. And a quick one for me. You have been, I know that you've been mentoring quite a group of people who are involved in family businesses. What do you tell them when you're giving them advice?
It's a long game.
What is a long game?
It's not a marathon. The one that you normally run, that one is very short.
Really?
Yes, this one is...
This is the comrade, not the one... This is Kambugu business.
The guys die at the end.
This is Kambugu running from Nairobi to Arusha. This is what it means.
Exactly. It's a long game. It's a long... And sometimes quite... Sometimes you're worn out. Sometimes you're tired. Sometimes...
So you need the stamina.
You need the stamina. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes you need to go back. You need to go backwards. It is a very, very long game. And the thing that you have to work on is you have more balls to juggle. You have more things to look out for.
Wow.
So you're looking out not just the P&L. You're not looking out just at the balance sheet. You're not just looking out at where is the growth going to come from. You're not just looking out for... No, you also have the shareholders. You have the owners. You have the employees, like every other business.
And then the family.
And then there is the family, because the family has a certain expectation, a view, a brand that comes with the business.
And they're reliant on you.
And they're reliant on you. So the advice that I give them is you need to be ready for a very long slog.
What's your final word to us?
Maybe words. Maybe they'll not be a final
Anything.
words.
Yeah. What would you leave us to reflect on?
When I started out, my own personal entrepreneurial journey in the mid-90s, and starting up businesses and running them, it was really hard to hire people's sons and daughters.
Wow.
There was a very strong stigma against working for people.
Yes.
Working for those traders, working for those businessmen.
Yes.
I have found in 15 years or so that there has been a shift. Perhaps maybe the brand has become a bit stronger. I can't 100% be sure, but one of the reasons why I would go out on and tell people a little bit about family business is that they are good places. They are loyal to their employees as much as the individuals that found these businesses.
Yeah.
So people are very resistant and hesitant to jump in because they don't understand. There is a big misunderstanding of what is the true nature of a family business. This individual that I'm going to work for, is he an erratic being, an erratic character? Okay. Is he going to fire me one day? But what I have found with time is there is a more general acceptance.
Yeah.
And I think what people who out there maybe might be have options, because the problem is if you don't have a job, you will work for anybody who gives you the job.
Yeah, true.
But if you have an option and you've got talent and you're good and you can really add value, sometimes family businesses are a very good place to be, very good place to work. Decision making is quick.
Yes.
The management of resources can be very fast and can be very efficient.
And even frugal.
And also family businesses tend to be very frugal on things that they don't need.
Exactly.
So it is not common, while I don't want to be, but it is not common that you will find a strong family business as a sponsor.
Okay. I see what you mean.
Of it.
Yeah. I know what you mean. You're very careful with your money.
You're very careful with your money. You're going
because there is a survival.
There's a survival, and then there is a caretaking instinct that needs to be at play all the time. And I think with that, I always try to encourage people to learn more about how they work, in order to work for them, or in order to do business with them. If you want to do business with them, you want to be a supplier and understand exactly what is the dynamic like, you need to understand them, take a bit of time, understand how they work, and get your children to learn how to work.
Thank you very much, Aga.
Thank you.
This one goes down as one of the best.
No, thank you.
And thank you very much for those of you guys who are on Spaces. This is the time when I tell you, have a fantastic weekend. And to those of you who may have missed it, you can go to the YouTube channel, you'll find it there, and watch it over and over and over again. Thank you very much, and good night.